Okay, there's that live button. Hello, hello, everyone, and hi, Katie. We are here. Yeah, this is my friend Katie, who is an expert, really just such a powerhouse on working with people who have different eating disorders. So, actually, Katie, I'm going to let you describe what you do because you'll do a better job than me. And then I want to really dive in. I'm so grateful for your time right now, right before the holidays, especially.
Yes, of course. What we do is we help people who struggle specifically with binge eating, also food addiction, emotional eating, yo-yo dieting. So really, it's across the board, but it can all kind of boil down, I think, to compulsive overeating, eating when we don't want to be eating.
Yeah. And maybe also what you don't wanna be eating, right? So there's when and what, like sticking stuff in your mouth that you know you shouldn't.
Right, exactly.
So I feel like, certainly in my own life, I can relate to that at different times. Thankfully, I don't have an issue now with that, but I know that sometimes the holidays, people or other things trigger it, but the holidays can be this like, okay, free for all. It's the holidays, so I'm just going to eat whatever. And then you feel terrible afterwards about your choices. And are there certain things that you find with the people that you work with that contributes to these patterns being triggered?
Yeah. So, gosh, there are so many, but I feel like the first one, which is one of the biggest ones in general, we should address first. So, for people who aren't super familiar with why binges or overeating or feeling out of control, what can even cause that? One of the major things that can cause it is restriction.
Mm,
So especially, the people we work with have been on different diets for years. And what happens when we go on a diet, right? We build up like this motivation and this will to succeed on this diet, and then we put a lot of energy into sticking with the plan.
yeah.
And eventually, what a lot of people find at the end of the diet is not only do they then gain the weight back, but gain the weight back plus more.
Yeah.
So, what's been found, not by me, but by others before me, is that it's the restriction actually plays a huge role in binges. And it's thought to be the number one cause, actually, of binge eating is restriction, which is ironic because a lot of the treatment protocols out there for binge eating actually involves restriction, which then keeps people in the cycle and then wondering what the heck is wrong with me because I'm doing what I'm told, yet my binges are only getting worse or they're staying the same. So, with
Yeah.
the holidays, with this time of year, I think that it's not only because we can talk about some emotional triggers as well. Let's talk about that after. But
Okay.
there's always this built in looming restriction with the holidays because what comes after? The new year. And what do we want to do in the new year? We want to lose all the weight. We want to feel better. We want to go on the exercise regimen. We want to eat all the healthy foods. So if we know psychologically restriction is on its way, restriction is coming, come January 1st, I am in restriction mode, then what are we going to do first? Right? We're going to binge. Just like how if I said, hey, starting tomorrow, we're all going on a diet together. And it's not that bad of a diet. The only things that we can't eat is chocolate and chips. We can have everything else. We just can't have chocolate and chips. What are we going to go out and eat today?
Totally.
I'm gonna get some chocolate and I'm gonna get some chips. I'm gonna get my favorite kinds and I'm gonna eat them all day because starting tomorrow I can't have them anymore.
Yeah.
So the new year coming right after these holidays, that is that looming restriction where then we actually go even more overboard than we might have even wanted to because we have to get it all in now before we can't have any more fun in the new year. So I think that that's one of those subconscious things that a lot of people don't even know is looming there, that I'm
Mhm.
trying to get in all of the fun before I can't have any anymore. And we
Yeah.
associate all that overeating and overindulgence with fun and all of the restriction with not fun. So the restriction is definitely going to be one of the bigger factors involved in all of this. But we can also talk about the emotional piece if that is relevant to
It
your.
is. It is, and I was thinking, and I don't want to leave restriction just yet, but I do want to get into the emotional piece as well. But on in terms of the restriction, a lot of in my history in my career as a health and wellness professional, the last several years working with people with autoimmunity, what they need to do to heal is to restrict their diet, right? They have gut issues, the gluten is a problem, so you've got to cut out all that. And I know in a lot of the courses that I took and the trainings, it was like have people, totally wipe that out so that they can heal. And you do need to do that, I guess, but it can trigger like what you're saying, the restriction thing. And I always took the approach, I'm not really doing that with people so much anymore, but I always did take the approach of we've got to get you back to eating as much as you can because you can't live like this. And people would do great for 6 months, 9 months, and then they're like, whew, I don't know what happened, but I went off the rails. So that's a little bit tricky if you have to restrict because for your health, right?
Yeah, it does get tricky. I actually, us getting on here today got me thinking about that because one of the questions I get from time to time, from people is either connected to health, where they say, I went to the doctor, or I went to this dietitian, or I went to this expert who told me that whatever gut issues I have or whatever health issues I'm experiencing can be remedied through diet. So
Mm-hmm.
they prescribed me this diet. I did it for a week, but then I just couldn't sustain it. And then I binged and I went totally in the opposite direction. And so
Yeah.
now so when that happens, we're left with this question of, how do I navigate both? If I'm trying to stick with this for my health, but then my relapse is actually making it worse for my health, how
Yeah.
do I it's a very tricky cycle. So and of course, we can't say as an absolute answer for everyone,
Right.
but I'm sure that, when you work with people, it's much easier when they don't come in with eating disorder baggage, because they are
Yes.
able to follow the healing protocol the way that it's meant and see it medicinally without triggering all these disordered eating patterns.
Yeah.
So we found that for people who have these disordered eating patterns, even though yes, it would be ideal if we could just stick to the diet and heal and let that be the end of it. But if there's repeated trials of that and it's not happening, then really you're at the point where, okay, let me look at the disordered eating first, heal
Yeah.
that part of myself, so that way I'm in a much better place where I can allow myself to go into a healing protocol that will restrict my diet. Um, and also I think, it's really the mentality around it, right? Because it's never about that the food itself is triggering those things. It's the mentality around it.
Right.
And some people can adopt that mentality, and some people need to have a certain level of healing first with their own disordered eating issues before they can adopt that mentality. So it's always, so no matter where you are, if you're listening and you're like, oh crap, that's me, wherever you are, there's a way out regardless. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of what steps you need to take in what sequence.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really true. When I was doing a lot of that, as I said, I work with people now really around stress as the one specific monumental issue. But when I was doing a lot of work with the diets and everything, I would often think to myself, you know, getting a handle on your eating patterns first before we take on actually using the food to heal you would be so much better. So I love that you just say there is a way out. You just have to like, what step am I going to put in place first? And and really, it sounds like you might agree with me that, again, I'm not doing that with people anymore, but I used to say to my clients, the goal is not to have you stay restrictive. It's not going to work
Right.
long term. The goal is to get you to heal and then in an appropriate way add in as many foods as we can so that you can feel like you're living your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's
Okay.
also great that you focus on the stress first. And I'll just add in that we do the same, very similar approach, um, where, because in any situation, like let's say, you know, and I know this isn't, I'm not like referring to one of your protocols, but let's just say
Yeah.
like I'm, that if I have a green smoothie every day, it will heal me, right?
Right.
So if I do that, but I'm at the same time super stressed out, drinking it really quickly, not breathing, not calming myself. I'm not giving myself the best possible circumstances for
Right.
healing, because the stress is undoing a lot of the benefits that I would get. So it's kind of like, if you're like driving to your yoga class and you're cursing everybody on the road on the way to your yoga class and on the way home, you're kind of undoing some of those benefits. So the stress is going to be a really important part to nail. And especially with overcoming binge eating, emotional eating, and all these kinds of triggers, it's the same thing, because the whole underlying energy of all of that is out of controlledness.
Exactly.
So when
Exactly.
we're stressed, we're only fueling that out of controlledness, where the more we can activate our parasympathetic nervous system, the more we can calm ourselves.
Right.
Not only will the body then function more properly, but we're going to be in a place mentally where we can make these more clear decisions that are aligned with our goals long term.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the stress is such a trigger, and that's what I really saw. Was I was helping people do the detoxing and the gut stuff, but when we didn't handle their stress, it all unraveled, and I was like, this is really, and it's really, I love it a lot more. Rather than talking to them about their poop, I like to talk to them about their how they're thinking and feeling, so I'm enjoying it more too. But anyway, so let's go to emotional eating, because again, like around the holidays, either you're visiting family, which brings back old family patterns and dynamics that you might trigger you, or just the joy of it, right? If you have a family whose traditions are around, big meals and eating all of this stuff, and you want to participate, and then the rest of the year we things happen and we end up shoving food in our mouth. So anything about that that you could tell people?
Yeah. So there's so much emotional baggage that can come up with the holidays, even without the food.
Right.
um, just family. Anytime family is involved, there tends to be some emotions, because a lot of our initial traumas come from mom and dad. And I was just speaking with a client yesterday who she was sharing, she just started with us, and she was sharing, like, I'm nervous about the holidays coming because last year I was 90 pounds lighter, and now I know everyone's going to see me and I'm going to be judged, and I'm going to feel that judgment.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of emotions that can come along in various forms when we're seeing family, and insecurities that can come up. But the important thing that I think is critical to recognize, especially when people are starting to get their head too consumed with the thoughts of food during the holidays, um, is first of all to remember the essence of what you want out of the experience. Um, so, for example, what are the holidays really about? They're about coming together, they're about family. Even with the food, even the essence underneath all the food, it's not indulgence, it's not greed, it's abundance, right?
Yes.
And when
Yes.
we're in a true state of abundance, there is no scarcity, there is no lack. We don't need to overeat to compensate for the scarcity that's coming, right? When
Yes.
there's true abundance, we can really just be peaceful, enjoy what we have, but not still be wanting.
Yes.
So a lot of times our emotions can rattle us, and we use the food that's around, since it's so decadent, right? It's very comforting, right? Food is comforting, and that's good. There's nothing bad about food being comforting. But if we're in an emotional state and then we have this decadent food around us, and that is serving like as the comfort, to whatever emotional things we're experiencing, then of course that can lead into that cycle of emotional eating, where food is the only comfort.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people find that, um, when we're in an uncomfortable situation, and we're in a situation of uncertainty where we're not sure how our family's going to act, we're not sure when we're going to be triggered, we just know it's
It's
probably
coming.
going to come at some point, then we're naturally going to be seeking comfort in some way. And because
Yes.
food is all around us, because it's such a natural comfort, we're going to feel drawn to that.
Yeah.
So I think one of the first most important steps that a lot of people miss is to recognize that this is a natural reaction, and that we're not bad and we're not wrong for
Yeah.
having that experience, because a lot of times the self criticism and the beating can even, that drives us to then eat even more, right? When we
Yep.
feel bad about ourselves, we take ourselves down that spiral. So the first step that I think is important is to acknowledge, like, this is a natural reaction that I'm experiencing.
Mm,
I do feel triggered. I do feel anxiety. I do feel hurt, or whatever the emotion is, to acknowledge what the emotion is and to acknowledge that whatever we're experiencing is natural, is normal. And instead, to look at, how can I give myself what I'm looking for? Um, Aside from food. It doesn't mean it can't include food. We're not saying
right.
instead, because even the word instead can seem like a restriction. But instead of saying that this is the only way I can comfort myself, we can start opening the mind to what else would feel good right now. What would
Yeah.
actually feel good for me? So instead of, because a lot of times we think that eating healthfully and feeling good go together, right? Which they often do. But there's also lots of other things that can help us feel good in conjunction. So going on walks, drinking water, breathing, relaxing, enjoying other people's company, right? All of these things are things that we can take comfort in. And so it's important during the holidays to be aware and to have that awareness that you might be seeking comfort. If you're feeling emotionally jarred, you will naturally seek comfort. So instead of working against yourself by saying, well, I don't want to indulge in food, so I'm just going to ignore that and try to restrict myself,
Right.
that's often how we get back into the binge cycle. But what if we instead said, okay, I know that I'm going to feel emotional. I know that I'm going to feel jarred. So let me give myself as much comfort as I possibly can. Let me work with myself. And
Yeah.
then the more satisfied, the more comfortable we feel, the less we're reaching for food as the only way that we can feel. It's not that food, it's not that it's negative to let food comfort us, right? I think sometimes that can be used in a positive way. But when it's to the place where it's really not serving us, where it's actually harming us more than it's helping us, that's where we can have that awareness and say, okay, what else? What other ways can I comfort myself in this situation? And let me really give myself um, permission to comfort myself, to acknowledge that I have been triggered or I might be triggered, and let me give myself as much comfort as I can.
Yeah. I love that. You said that so well. I knew you would, but it makes such sense. And I was thinking as you were talking, when you mentioned like afterwards, the beating ourselves up, sometimes the trigger is we're unhappy with ourselves in other areas, and then we eat, and then beating ourselves up becomes like a validation. See, I am a loser. See, I can't do this well either. There's a which is oftentimes very subconscious. It's not even a conscious necessarily thought, but it's kind of how we feel about ourselves, and then that eating just sort of cements the deal. It's like more evidence for all the things that we're beating ourselves up for. I don't know if that's true with what because I don't work necessarily with eating issues at all, but I just had that thought while you were talking.
Oh, yeah, I would 100% agree with that, because um, it's the cycle of, it always starts, here's how I think the cycle looks, and of course there's variations, but it starts with the restriction, right? I'm restricting, I'm restricting, I'm restricting, can't eat the donut, can't eat the donut, can't eat the donut. Then eventually I need to eat the donut. I've been thinking
Yep.
about it so much, let me just have it, right? Then we eat it, overeat, and then we go into that cycle of, like what you're saying, the self-criticism, the shame, all those things, which can either trigger us to eat more, or it can then trigger us right to, all right, well, clearly I can't be trusted. Clearly I'm the worst. Clearly I have zero motivation and zero willpower. So now I need even more restrictions. I need to get on an even more extreme diet. So
Yeah.
instead of the inclination to work with yourself, it's basically saying, let me do what didn't work, but let me just do it harder.
Yes.
And then as we restrict more, then the binges also become more extreme. So we find ourselves again in that loop that becomes more and more, the pendulum swings even further to each extreme. But the self-criticism, I think, plays a huge, huge role. Even just the simple act of, after we make a mistake or a misstep like that, even just to say, I forgive myself, even if we're
Yes.
not fully feeling it, like deep in our souls, even if we're, but just the practice, getting ourselves into the practice of saying, I forgive myself. Some people think, well, won't that just give me a free pass to do it again? No, what it allows you to do is accept where you are and have that awareness of where you are, and then be more gentle with your approach and yourself for next time, so you can work with yourself instead of against yourself to get what you want.
Yeah. And it's giving yourself compassion, which is comforting. If you give yourself the compassion, you don't need the food to give you the
Right?
comfort.
You're
You're
giving
giving it to
yourself more
yourself.
comfort.
Yeah, with your own forgiveness and your own, loving yourself through the process. So, yeah, my heart, when you were talking about it, I was just thinking about the people who are really in that, and really what a blessing it is to work with someone like you, because you have compassion coming out of every pore. It's like, it is, it's who you are. And, I know that, the people really feel that when they work with you. Is there
Mm.
anything else that you wanna share? It's been like a year since we've done a live,
I know. I mean, I feel like the bottom line is, like, remember the essence of the holidays. Like, as you're going into it, we can get so caught up in the little things. Just remember the essence and set your intention when you're going to that family dinner. Set the intention for what you want out of it, not for what you don't want, right? Not for,
Yeah,
I'm going to try to have only one piece of pie and only one serving of this. Instead of focusing on that, focus on the essence of what you want out of the experience, to
yeah,
truly be present and enjoy the food that you're eating, to be present and enjoy the people that you're with, and to be present and enjoy yourself during the
yeah.
holidays. And the more
I
you can
love
do
it.
that, the happier and healthier you will be.
Awesome, I love it. Well, thank you so much. If people watching wanted to reach out to you, follow you on your page, get on your email list, any and all of that, where
Yeah, it's all on my website, katiepapo.com. We have a free Facebook group. We've got a podcast that I'm going on 4 days a week.
for that, your
We've got a
podcast
free
looks great.
training.
Pattypapo.
So,
Yeah, your podcast looks great. I saw that. That's you with your husband, right?
yep, just type in my name on Spotify and it'll come right up. So, new
Awesome.
episodes all the time. So, anyone who's struggling with the food issues, just give it a listen and see for
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah, yeah. All right, so Spotify, they type in your name, which I just put there, katiepapo.com. So thank you so much. I hope you have wonderful holidays. Are you doing something special?
Uh, Christmas is actually my birthday, which is when I tend to get
Wow.
pretty contemplative and focus on my own sort of goals and things like that. So, I'm usually in my own little world during the holidays,
Okay.
but I'm sure there'll be dinner with friends and things like that as well.
Awesome. Does that mean you're Sagittarius, or does that become
I am a
Capricorn?
Capricorn,
Oh, okay. I'm Sagittarius. I'm
very
yeah.
much meeting the Capricorn stereotype in a lot of ways.
Okay. Well, enjoy it. Happy birthday.
Thank you. You too, Linda. Thanks for having me, and happy holidays to you too.
Thanks so much. I'll see you soon.
See you soon.